People have asked questions that are nearly impossible to answer. What's the meaning of life? What happens after death? But the most important question, what's the worst Ninjago season? To answer this question, I'll be pulling from in what my opinion are the three worst Ninjago seasons. These are Secrets of Forbidden Spinjitzu, Prime Empire, and Skybound. Season 11's problems stem from the pacing, with filler episodes being more noticeable than ever, featuring uninteresting plotlines, characters that I could not give a single crap about. Now don't get me wrong, the entire season isn't awful. The Ice chapter definitely gives the season a slight boost, because that half of the season is actually interesting and features characters that are written pretty well. The animation this season is quite possibly one of the biggest downgrades, yet biggest upgrades the series has ever seen, going from the stunning animation of the Oni trilogy to the bland look of the Wildburn style. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt though, because this was the first season the studio worked on, so of course it's not going to look all that good, and thankfully the Wildburn animation has severely improved. More recent seasons such as Crystallized. Lack of an intro 2 is disappointing, because now it's just a clip show, no context given behind clip. The Weekend Whip playing, so it defeats the purpose of a recap if you haven't seen the previous episodes. They do get more creative after season 11, which, yeah, this is kind of a nitpick. The new 11-minute episode format is definitely a choice. It doesn't really feel like the plot is bogged down by it, but it definitely inflates the amount of episodes per season, which before would have been around 10 per season during the Will Film era, but with the 11-minute format, seasons can be 20 to 30 episodes long, which really would have only been 10 to 15 episode seasons, which, yeah, it's another nitpick. The elephant in the room, though, is Kai the season. Him instantly losing all motivation to help fight the Pyro Vipers is kind of stupid and out of character. Like, imagine if he just gave up saving Lloyd in possession because, oh no, he doesn't have power, so there's no point in fighting. I think out of all the things the season does wrong, this, in my opinion, is the very worst and most infuriating by far. Fights this season are, they're pretty top notch, but frequent use of the squash and stretch technique to add an extra oomph to when someone lands an attack. Now, while the Spinjitzu tornadoes are definitely somewhat of a downgrade from the Will Film days in terms of detail and texture, but the fights during this season are really great, which surprisingly the best fights of this season are mostly all from the Fire chapter, so there's that I guess. The villains of this season are decent enough, but I think the Pyro Vipers were slightly better than the Blizzard Samurai, although the idea of frozen zombie samurai is a great concept, and it's pretty much the only time we've had samurais as the main villains of a season, which is kind of wild to think about it. And while sure, the Pyro Vipers are just another snake enemy, the idea of snake mummies is also pretty good, especially Fire Fang, who's literally a fire version of the Great Devourer. I think the idea of Zane turning evil was done really well, and Brett Miller did a superb job of making the Ice Emperor sound like a completely different person. The idea of him being gaslit by the first person he met in the Neverrealm after losing his memories was... it was okay, I guess. Asphira is one of the best villains to come from the Wildburn seasons, although to hear her constantly yell "Revenge" can get pretty damn annoying after a while. Although her rivalry with Master Wu was handled pretty well, did an excellent job at giving us a plot twist of Wu being the Great Deceiver, which you would automatically assume would be Garmadon. The fact she knows Spinjitzu too also helps her stand out from the other Serpentine generals, and it's just pretty cool. But going back to the main complaint of this season is the amount of filler episodes. And thankfully, more recent Wildburn seasons, the amount of filler has been significantly cut down, but in this season, with especially the Fire chapter, has such unnecessary episodes to focus on the civilians reacting to being attacked by the Sphere's army, which is an interesting concept executed mediocrely. This season also gaslit Ninjago fans on Twitter into believing any episode that doesn't focus on the ninja is filler, which definitely is not the case with episodes such as the Tale of Belfamar and Paper Girl later in the Wildburn saga. But definitely the worst thing to be introduced was the 2D art style, or the fake anime art style, as some people have been calling it. It's really bad and looks really cheap too. One last positive about the season is that Akira was a really great character with understandable motivations. The second season that I would consider one of the worst is Prime Empire, due to the simple fact that it's boring. Plot is just an isekai, which this season is definitely better than most isekai anime out there, but that's a low bar. Best characters of the season without a doubt is Okino. It's such an interesting concept to see an NPC realize that they're not real and just a string of code, which is exactly what Okino goes through, even questioning if he has his own free will. Could have arguably been the main character of Prime Empire instead of Jay. The finale was one of the best fights in the Wildburn saga because it's a fight between two dragons, which is something that we just haven't seen in Ninjago before. The closest thing coming to it is Chompy killing Griefbringer or Master of the Mountain, which coincidentally aired the same year as Prime Empire. Although this is probably a leftover concept when Prime Empire and Master of the Mountain were supposed to be the same season. Food for thought, I guess. At the end of the day, Unagami wasn't even that great of a villain. He ended up being a misunderstood AI, so all is forgiven without any consequences, so there's that, I guess. But he has a cool character design. One of the cool moments in the season would have to be Avatar Harumi vs. Lloyd, which was hands down the best fight in the entire season. Scott was also a pretty good side character that hopefully will return in the second half of Crystallized. but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It's pretty weird that this season had a series of shorts that expanded off-screen material, such as Jay entering Prime Empire for the first time, Jay and Nia going to dancing lessons prior to the season's beginning, which maybe should have been episodes, but I digress.
The special Zane detective intro was also pretty cool and another great highlight of the season.
The final season we'll be discussing in this video is Skybound, which has always been a bit iffy to me. It's got great characters such as Nadakon, Flintlock, Clancy, and Dogshank, but dear god, this plot has a lot of ups and downs that make it arguably the best, yet worst season by far. My major issue with this season, aside from the terrible ending, is Nadakon thinking Nia is his dead wife Delara because they have similar hair, I guess? The entire plot of the season moves from Nadakon trying to turn Ninjago into his own personal realm to Nadakon trying to get Nia to marry him so he can obtain... The season has some decent J moments and gives us our first ever Fusion Dragon, which on a side note, the idea of Fusion Dragons needs to be shown more often. We also got Ninjago's most discussed topic, that being Echo Zane, who was a tin can version of Zane that was Dr. Julian's last creation, who was originally supposed to be Mr. E in Sons of Garmadon, and has mysteriously disappeared from the lighthouse and crystallized, so maybe he was Mr. E this entire time. However, this season definitely needs a direct follow-up at some point because thanks to Tommy and Drayson on Twitter, we know that Nadakon remembers the events of Skybound, plus the Sky Parts is still spread across the remaining 14 realms, leaving a very big possibility that in the future they could all return to take down the ninja. Oh, and I just have to talk about the balloon because having a villain know spinjitzu is very cool and automatically makes someone a cool villain in my book. Seeing Cloud's return as a ghost was also very unexpected when the season first dropped in 2016, and thankfully with him, his little arc was wrapped up in the Dark Island trilogy, which when I finish reading that, I'll do a video on it because it's surprisingly very difficult to get scans online, or to even just buy the graphic novel physically.
But the worst thing this season does by far is the way it ends. It's just really bad with everything being undone with a single wish. I kind of wish there was a bit more thought put into it, but hopefully someday we see consequences for that ending with the other ninja being mad at Jay or Nia or something, because as of now, it's really pointless and the worst finale to a season by far.
But the question still remains, which is the worst season? And in my humble, honest opinion, that would have to be season 11. This season just isn't that great overall, and it's only remembered for its negatives by the community, which isn't something I can say for Prime Empire and Skybound, well, at least mainly. While these seasons are mediocre, they aren't hated nearly as much, and don't have those stupid 2D animated segments, which thankfully we haven't seen since Master of the Mountain. But with this somewhat controversial video over, let me know in the comments what is your least favorite season. Just remember to keep it civil in the comments, because at the end of the day, this is a show about LEGO ninjas. There's absolutely no need to get worked over someone else's opinion. Unless it's factually wrong, of course.